I'm going to call this meeting to order. Tonight is a school board meeting of the Tri-City United School Board, and tonight is Monday, July 10th, 2017, and we're located at the TCU High School Band Room, and it is 6:00 p.m. Roll call, friends, all present. And before we approve the agenda, we have some additions to the agenda this evening. Under the consent agenda, under personnel, new hire, second grade, Montgomery, that's Ashley Lindquist, and also a resignation, Kristen Geisler, a high school special ed teacher. Under contracts, technology assistant, and also under policies, 540, the eligibility guidelines. Under information, TCU Junior High Wrestling Program expansion, and two new action items of the application for the cooperative sponsorship with Lee Sewer Henderson Schools for girls dance team and girls swim and diving, and also our MSBA renewal for 17-18 school year. So with that, I'll seek a motion to approve the agenda with noted changes.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Michelle Boker, second by Krista Gettle to approve the agenda with changes. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. All right, next we'll move on to our consent agenda. I have the approval of the minutes of our June 12th, 2017 regular school board meeting and also June 26th special school board meeting. Under personnel, we have a new hire of a .4 FTE art teacher in Lonsdale, Natalie Eckstein. New hire head dance coach, Emberlie, Tellijohn. A new hire kindergarten Montgomery, Cheryl, Pankow. New hire assistant track coach, and I'm going to go with air on that. New hire assistant varsity football coach, Matt Collins. A new hire junior football coach, and that will be air. New hire assistant wrestling coach, Jay Fredrickson. A new hire K6 music and 5/8 choir teacher in Lee Center, Thomas Stevingen-Rowe. I messed that one up again. New hire second grade Montgomery, Ashley Lindquist. Resignation, third grade teacher in Lonsdale, Natalie Eckstein. Resignation, technology network assistant, Amanda Nash. Resignation, special education teacher, high school, Kristen Geisler. Recommendation for tenure, Nicole Paddock in Montgomery. We have a couple contracts, special services director, director of IT facilities, Tri-City United Education Association, and a technology assistant. We have our first reading of some policies. 405, veterans preference. 414, mandated reporting of child neglect or physical or sexual abuse. 425, staff development. 509, enrollment of non-resident students. 513, student promotion, retention, and program design. 525, violence prevention. 534, unpaid meals. 540, eligibility guidelines. 601, school district curriculum and instruction goals. 603, curriculum development, and 604, instructional curriculum. 612.1, development of parent and family engagement policies for Title I programs. 613, graduation requirements. 616, school district system accountability, and 805, waste reduction and recycling. We have approval in the bills in the amount of $545,155.90, and also our finance report. And then I will seek a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion. Second.
Before we move to vote, I would like to just talk a bit on a couple of areas here, one of them being our Tri-City United Education Association contract approval. We began negotiations with our teachers employee group in about mid-April with a review and training of our interest-based bargaining process once again. We used that 2 years ago and found it to be a viable process for conversation, discussion, and even building relationships. And so coming back into this IBB session again, we met on a weekly basis from the beginning of May, each session being a minimum of 4 hours long, and then from there also having a full 8 to 9 hour day as well. And once again, we found the process to be one that was of high value in being able to not only discuss the items that we came to agreement on, but also in coming to some understandings of other topics as well. And one of the pieces that really want to commend our board negotiators and our teacher negotiators on was the real listening that happened and the openness of conversation and discussion, being able to talk about tough topics and yet still coming to consensus and agreement. And so very positive interactions and connections with our teachers. We have some great teacher leaders within the employee group, and they do a good job in communicating. Some pieces that were really important in coming into this negotiations really does have to do with a lot of the feedback we've received and known about being able to be not only a school culture and climate that attracts and retains, but also having a contractual financial situations and everything, and also language within some of the other areas that attracts and retains high-quality educators. And I think we felt good on both sides that this contract will do that, and being able to move us into some comparables with not only neighboring districts, but districts of similar size. And so it is one of our earliest to ever be concluded with negotiations if the board so approves this contract tonight. But it also is a sign of the united ways that are happening within our district, and being able again to be the district of choice for the high quality employees. So I want to hit a few highlights on the contract. We did increase our new teacher salary schedule in moving our grid up, but also adding steps. We currently were only at step 13. We've added up to step 20 so that we'd be able to attract teachers with experience as well as new teachers coming out of their training. We also made some changes to the lane advancements so that our new hires matched our current teachers. And then we also just did some cleanup of language within credit equivalencies. Within health and hospitalization insurance, we did increase the contribution for full single to the amount that should cover this next year. The second year, will what we estimate could be the complete cap. This would come close, but not quite to a full single. We did also increase, again, our family insurance to once again be able to attract teachers with experience who be able to move to our communities. Just did some cleanup and consistency of sick leave language, and bereavement language, I should say. Within our sick leave, we do a wellness payout, and we moved the number of unused sick leave days to 75 from 105. We found that we really did some digging in on our attendance, and we thought we had some greater issues than we do, and yet we really found that our attendance this last year was at a better rate than it was the year before, even though we felt, I know, many days of not having enough subs, which we'll be talking about later on with an action item as well. The length of school year, this was in direct feedback and response to our teacher mentoring and induction program and the feedback from our new teachers. They felt that before the school year begins, they need a little more time than just the one full day. So we were able to move that to 3 days. We had 2 study groups this year that really put a great deal of time in, one being on supplemental compensation, which affects our coaches and advisors for athletics and co-curriculars, and again, working hard to be at comparable rates within our MRC, but also in comparable districts. And then the other study group had to do with our Q-Comp and taking a look at the overall plan and how we can make that more meaningful and supportive of our teachers' growth and development. And so the negotiations teams did accept the recommendations from those 2 study groups to move that along. And as you can see, our salary benefits package, we do have a performance pay with an add percentage, which is just an add to base, which is attained through evaluation and teacher portfolio work. And so that percentage at a 2.24 this first year, 2.13 the second, and then an overall add-on to that of a 151 and a 237. And so, as I said, this has been voted on and approved by our teachers union, and upon board approval tonight, we would have a ratified contract and be able to move forward with any kinds of back pay and being right on schedule. Any questions for any of our negotiators? I know in an IBB process, there's not a lot of communication that occurs. That is an agreement between both groups. And so if you have some questions, Michelle and Dan and Marcia served as your board representatives. A lot of hours, a lot of discussion.
Yes. But it was all good. It was good discussion, and to have those candid conversations, it was very good. All right, any other questions? I have a motion on the table by Dan Rudd, second by Kevin Huber, to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. Next, we have our open forum. I believe there have not been any requests for the evening to speak in front of the board, so we'll move on to informational items, and the first is our legislative overview for 2017.
Well, we actually have a agreed upon legislative session, and it's only the beginning of July. So something that has been a little different from some past years, but there was quite a bit of things done that I want to highlight, and I will go rather quickly, but want to make sure that all of us are aware of some of the impacts, both financial and within policies, that came through this last legislative session. One of the big ones that we really spent a great deal of time communicating with our legislators, not only locally but also at the higher up levels, was the school building bond agricultural credit. This was the one that came close to being able to be passed a session ago, but then in the end was not approved or signed, and so it did come back at the same level as was there before. And so this would have a 40% tax credit for property owners. You notice it does kind of follow that same language as what an operating levy would do. So it does not, it excludes the house, garage, and 1 acre. But the 40% tax is effective for taxes payable 2018. The other piece to bear in mind, and want to make sure that all of our landowners know, that this is not just on future bonds, but it is on current bonds. And so they should see this reduction on their property tax estimates this fall. And so this is a very important one to try to make it a little more equitable on school bonds between landowners and homeowners and business owners. This was a biggie for the State High School League tickets and admissions, that moving away from the having them exempt from sales tax. This does then, I think, allow us to be able to access some of those funds for free and reduced percentages at school districts, which we were not able to get as a reimbursement this year. Do I have that correct, Jason?
Yeah, it sounds like that's going.
Yep. All right. Within the tax bill, there was a tax bill approved for attaining a master's degree for teachers' licensure. This has direct connection with our college and the schools courses, or concurrent courses, whereby the Higher Learning Commission, teachers need to have a master's within their content area, or at least 18 credits towards that. And so this is a tax credit to try to help make that happen. There is another bill as well that we're hoping to be able to have some of our teachers be a part of as well with that. But it hopefully we will have teachers being able to access that, because this is typically people get their, or teachers get their master's in like ed leadership, teaching and learning. So to have one in your content area is going to be an added expense. The general education revenue was a 2% and 2%, and even though we are very appreciative of the state to be able to have any kind of formula increase, we do realize once again that is below the typical cost of living, or the inflationary increases, which are typically over 3%. So once again, we've lost ground, but we have to be thankful for the amounts that are there, and we'll do our best to handle those funds in a very fiscally conservative and important manner of our taxpayers. Compensatory funds, this is one that is a new one in that moving forward. Compensatory funds, a percentage does need to be set aside for extended time activities, which meaning after school or summer school. We currently have not used basic skills dollars in those areas, so those will be some funds that we are going to have to set aside in the future to make sure that we are following the legislative act. Special education transportation, the state did take things a little further than what the federal government did, so that we are still able to, when we have students awaiting foster care, we are able to provide transportation and receive that reimbursement. The federal government did take that away and was indicating that no, there would not be reimbursement for that. And we can end up with children needing to be transported from quite a distance. We've had some as far as an hour to 20 minutes away that we've needed to transport. But it is important to be able to provide consistency for children when they are in some dire straits in situations like this. Some other miscellaneous general funding. In an operating referendum notice, it can be sent by any kind of mail rather than first class only. And non-public aid was expanded in the definition of textbooks to include some of the digital aspects. So do need you to all know that within public education funds do go for non-public schools for things as transportation, textbooks, special education, counseling, and nursing services. So those are dollars that are public dollars going to non-public educational organizations. This was one that has really been talked about a great deal up at the legislative and at the Capitol, and I foresee it will be again in the future. Very strong emphasis on preschool and funding for preschool. They could not quite get to an agreement on that yet, and so we've had the voluntary pre-K program. Now we also have the School Readiness Plus, which is in essence voluntary pre-K, but gives it another name so that both Senate, House, and Governor have a chance to have some input on it and to say they created a preschool program. But what it does do, though, is to increase, as you can see, increase by 3,000 participants, and does provide some funding for that. There are some other strings that come along with it, but it would be very valuable for us to be able to access it. Tri-City United did apply for the voluntary pre-K program this last year, and we now also have applied for the School Readiness Plus. We do need to apply by sites, and so the only site in which we'd have the space to be able to provide this programming in this kind of timeline is at our Tisiula Center site, so that is the only site that we've been able to apply for these funds. And we are to know, or supposed to know, by August 1st if we receive them. Early learning, it did link to the general fund formula, which is important to do, otherwise these areas get forgotten, and as general fund has formula increases, these stay flat. So it is good to see that increase there as well. And again, hoping that we're able to move forward with even more early learning opportunities for our children. We did go through the parent aware rating once again, and we did receive once again the highest rating of a 4-star, meaning quality. It's not about the quantity and it's not about the number of sessions, it's about the quality that we provide. So we do have some very high quality programming that's happening. We just want to be able to reach more of our children, because currently only about half of our incoming kindergarten children are accessing a preschool program. And so we really do need to be able to provide some more seats for our children in those areas. Within facilities, there was a couple of areas, one being lead in school drinking water tests that need to occur beginning by July 18th. We have been a part of the testing for lead in our school drinking water since 2014 and have been a part of a 5-year plan already for that, so we're ahead of the game there. It also adds within the review and comment, when you're looking at possible bond referendums, you know the review and comment is the document that gets submitted to the state. Commissioner and Department of Education review it and thus approve, which we had a very high approval on the last one that we had submitted. But this also then includes that the Commissioner must reference comments from district residents, because we have been diligent in having facilities task forces and listening sessions, and the survey that we've conducted, we will certainly meet that criteria very easily with any future review and comments. And then we would also need to review the Commissioner's review and comment response in an open meeting, which a school board meeting is an open public meeting. Some policy areas. This gets a little more entangled than the straightforward with the finance. A few things that are going to take some work on our part, but some of the things we have already been doing. It allows for a district to create an alternative teacher preparation program. We do not have one of those, and I don't really know of any districts so far who have gone that far with it. I know there's some who've been looking at some grow your own programs, which would be something that we'd maybe want to examine as to what those look like and what kinds of costs they would be. The state concurrent enrollment teacher training program, this is the one I referenced a little bit ago. A few years ago there was a pilot program with the Northwest Regional Partnership that provided funds as a partnership with Minnesota State University Moorhead and teachers to be able to gain those 18 credits I referenced earlier for concurrent enrollment courses, to be able to receive those courses at no cost. They did open that up for other districts to be able to access that. We did apply, but I have not heard if we had anyone get accepted. I am going to doubt it, because in the past there's been very few open spots. But because of this legislation, maybe it will be able to open more spots, or at least least continue longer for more people to access. There was also the statute of eliminating the statutory model of unrequested leave of absence determined only by seniority. This does indicate that school boards and bargaining units are going to need to negotiate that language. As you can tell, it's effective July 1, 2019. We will need to begin those discussions before the next contract negotiations begins. And that would be obviously, again, probably a meet and confer type of topic or a study group that we'd bring together. But that's going to take some time and some real discussion and understanding of what that really means and looks like. The Every Student Succeeds Act is the federal reenactment of No Child Left Behind. There are a few changes and supposedly more flexibility. I think we will not see too much change from it because we've already been a part of some of the waivers that occurred with the world's best workforce. So I really foresee our requirements will look very similar here in Minnesota as they have in the past. For example, these types of things that we need to include our school performance reporting. We've done that all along. Calculations of proficiencies, we've been doing that all along. And we need to develop, update, and post our performance reports. We've been doing that all along. So it's just now, I guess, in law. This one I think is rather disappointing. I have to be very frank about it. Our state legislature a few years ago took the step to fund ACT testing for all juniors across the state. And we really did see, and I know other districts did too, saw students take the ACT and gain results that really did open doors and open their own eyes to possibilities. And then this last year, the state only had a certain amount, so it was going to fund some of the ACT costs, probably about 80%, and now they've moved to that they are only going to reimburse for students who receive free or reduced lunch and meals. And so we still need to offer it, but the students who would not be on free and reduced meal benefits would need to pay. I mean, we're going to need to take a look at what that's really going to look like, because the last thing we want to do is to have any type of identifier on students about their socioeconomics. That's just not right. We even have the unpaid meals policy that, we have been diligent on never demeaning or having any of that information become public. And so I think this is going to be a tricky one to navigate how we may want to handle it. I've asked Mr. Fitter to do some calculations on what it might cost for us to just cover it anyway, and I'll bring those forward later on this fall. It's a possibility to figure out how to make that happen or how we want to handle it. So obviously we have to follow the statute. Personal learning plans, that has been in effect, and we do inform parents of their student achievement levels on the MCAs. We've done that all along. And then one of the pieces that wasn't a part of this session but did come about recently that we are going to really want to make sure that our students and families know is that even though the MCA score does not affect their ability to graduate, there is some language now that if a student has passed the MCA and a university indicates that they think the student, said student needs to take a remedial course in that subject, their MCA meeting proficiency can demonstrate their proficiency, and they would not be forced to have to take the remedial course. And so that's a money savings, and it also does give a little bit of meat at least to the MCA score, so that students are really giving their best. And we have found that high school students have been tested since 3rd grade, and they kind of get to a point where it's tough to get that motivation. And so we want to make sure that people realize, and our kids realize, these do make a difference and can make a difference, and especially in the pocketbook, if nothing else, for additional courses. Reading proficiency, we are going to need to be doing more paperwork and proof of some of the interventions that we do for students who are not reading at grade level in grade 3 or higher. We've always done interventions and do our benchmarking, but this does take us a little further to developing personal learning plans and to really be very intentional on what's in those learning plans and our communication thereof. But again, a lot of these pieces we have been doing, but it just puts some more crossing the T's and dotting the I's to make sure that it's a little more in a formal format and structure. The state does now allow for up to 5 e-learning days due to inclement weather. I think we've maybe seen some of this on some of the press or newspapers of districts where they've needed to close school and they call it a digital learning day, or that it's really meant to be that the learning would continue on through a blended format. We'd need to develop a plan in partnership and consultation with our union in order to do so. Need some accommodations for students without internet at home. Some districts have developed learning packets for grades that do not have a one-to-one, or for in situations if there isn't internet at home. We're going to need to flesh some things out to determine if this is something we want to access or not. We do not have language for it right now, but it would be something I think for us to study and to determine how it might benefit our students.
Terry, would that be only for high school, or would that, does it talk about
Well,
who would be for it? If it
Yeah.
doesn't, it's okay, but
Well,
just curious.
it did not determine what grade levels, it just said as the district. So, for example, I know some, I believe St. Peter did one this last year, and for their younger grades that did not have a one-to-one, that's like they had the paper packets, which
Okay.
could be a possibility. We want to make sure that it's really about deep learning and not just filling things out or jumping through the hoops and everything, so. Elections, this was also an important one for our districts to recognize and for our public to know that special elections or elections to approve bond issuance, now there are 5 designated dates for those. Either the second Tuesday in February, second Tuesday in April, second Tuesday in May, or second Tuesday August, or the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. And so you can't just pick any old day, and we really couldn't before. There were windows of time that you could and could not. But I think this makes it very public about that these are designated special election days. School districts, in using one of those dates, it's not about trying to hide anything. It's being very transparent and following the statute on it and using one of the designated dates by the state. The other piece is combined polling places, which we have done before, but we will need to do on an annual basis going forward. And so by December 31st, we would designate polling locations for the next year, and we will be doing that at our August meeting. I do want to clarify one thing then too from our last meeting, our work session, as we were talking about the polling location and our situation of if we were to consider a November election with our Lonsdale community. They do have a mayoral election this November. I maybe did not clearly state the challenge that would bring if we did an election on that date. It would mean that any of our residents who do not live in the city of Lonsdale would need to go to a different location to vote. It did not mean that people in Lonsdale would have to go somewhere else. But it does, if you do land on the same date, we would need to have the city of Lonsdale having their mayoral election at the city hall and non-city residents voting somewhere else, which we would have to designate by 90 days ahead of time. But just clarifying that for us. And those are kind of the main parts of the legislative session. Any questions or comments or anything? I know that there was an awful lot of email communications that went. Really appreciate when our board is able to do that and also able to come to our legislative session where we do the partnership with the cities and with the cities, I should say, and our legislators, and then also some visits to the Capitol. So thanks for your part in advocating for public schools and for our district. It wasn't as long a session as we've had at times, but it was always interesting, wasn't it? All right. I guess in summary, the biggies, the ag tax credit going through, the setting of the 5 dates for special elections, and the 2% and 2% formula funding.
All right, next we'll move on to our TCU Junior High Wrestling Program expansion.
Good evening, Terry. Board. How are you all tonight?
Good.
Good. I've been in discussion with our coaches for our wrestling coaches, Coach Michael, Coach Block, and Coach Fredrickson. And we've been talking about the wrestling program and how we currently function in meets and matches for our 7th and 8th graders. And currently they all wrestle together in the wrestling room here at TCU. Sometimes varying on the year, there can be up to 30 to 35 kids wrestling in our wrestling room, and they do a great job of trying to make it work the best they can. However, with 7th through 12th grade, there's varying abilities and there's varying things that each student needs. So 7th and 8th graders are needing more repetition and maybe a little more breakdown of some of the moves, where seniors are well beyond that. And sometimes it gets to be where they don't get the instruction that they need on either end, whether seniors are being held back or the varsity is being held back a little by more simple moves by the junior high and vice versa. And so we talked about the possibility of taking the 7th and 8th graders that wouldn't be necessarily wrestling varsity or JV, and possibly bringing them over to TCU List Center, where we have a wrestling room that isn't being used during the winter. And Coach Fredrickson, who you just approved, thank you very much, he would take them there and break down more skill sets for their wrestling abilities and be able to give them more reps and something more closer to their level of experience and what they need. And then there would be more room for everybody. They can use the shuttle bus that's going over there already for the junior high basketball and back, so it wouldn't cost the district anything as far as practice-wise goes. It would, however, we would like to also increase the amount of meets for them, because currently right now they only wrestle JV from for 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade if they don't wrestle varsity. And so they're sometimes wrestling kids, dependent on whether a team has a student in that weight class for them. They would possibly wrestle students that are 2 to 3 years older than them, which we all know is a big jump. So there's some kids at that age level that can wrestle at that level, which is good, but there's many that don't. And in some cases, they don't get enough matches in a year either, because there's not that many other schools that would have those weight classes or age groups that could wrestle. There's what's called the Minnesota 9th grade and under wrestling league, which is mostly the southern towns like Apple Valley, New Prague, Eastview, East Ridge, some of those in the southern Shakopee. They're a part of this, and I did, I hope you got it, the 9th grade league handbook. I don't know if the deck gets sent out to all of you. Okay, good. So you could read through it and see what other towns are there. About 5 weeks or a month before the season, so sometime in November, October, you will pay the membership fee of $150, and then when they get all the towns that are interested in doing it, they divvy up or ask anybody who wants to host, and then you kind of do a little schedule circuit through the group and the league. And kids will get 2 to 3 matches a night. They wrestle kids their own weight class, their own grade level, and it's really very good for them. We did participate in it in Minnesota, so I'm familiar with the 9th grade league. There is regionals and state that they can go to. It's a very, very good league for those kids at that age level. And what I'm just giving you as information is something to think about for next month, where I would like to present to you or ask you to consider us being able to add 6 to 8 more meets. We would even be able to host 1 or 2 of them, depending on who all wants to host in the group if we decide to do this, or possibly allowing us to add this to our junior high wrestling program. And if we can't get into the 9th grade league, if you don't want to do that, at least for us to consider allowing 8 to 10 of the students to be able to go to the center and break off a little bit and at least wrestle in their own grade levels to practice.
Would this allow them to wrestle in open tournaments?
The ruling is if you, for wrestling, and there's a few other ones, but for wrestling, if you wrestle in the same room as varsity, that is considered your part of the varsity group, which does not allow you to wrestle in well, they're not state high school sanctioned, but non-school time period, like your NYWA and your Min USA tournaments that are open, ones that aren't affiliated with the school at all. They would not be if they wrestled with the varsity. If they are separate and never wrestle with the varsity, like if we have 8 to 10 students that would only wrestle in the center, they would be eligible to do that. But the moment you go up and wrestle with, either you wrestle in a meet with the varsity or JV or wrestle in the practice room, then they aren't eligible to do that anymore.
And 9th grade state, that's still open at 9th grade.
Yeah, it's 9th grade. It's for 9th grade, but you can fill the spots with 7th and 8th graders.
And to just be part of the youth program, we have a number of kids coming up as 6th graders into the 7th grade.
Yeah, there's 12 to 13.
Right, which would easily fill
So
those spots.
and when we sat down and talked with the coaches, they felt there was probably 3 or 4 that would be legitimate JV
Sure.
varsity wrestlers. So, but they felt anywhere from 8 to 10 would be really benefiting from just having a 7th and 8th grade practice room and meets.
Any other questions for Jason? We thought we'd bring it as information since this was, brand new, had not been discussed in any of the activities, reviews or anything like that. So you could have a little more discussion and time to think on it before considering it as an action item. So I guess any questions or any other information you feel you'd need in order to make a decision in the next month's meeting?
What do the kids or parents think about the separation of it?
We haven't
Break up
talked to the kids or parents about
I
it.
can tell you from a
I can tell you too.
father with the bigger boy. I mean, he wrestled juniors and seniors since he was a 7th grader. Last year was his worst year, and you could just tell he's almost at that breaking point. So I think it is better to get him back where he is wrestling competition. When he wrestles Min USA, he got 6 at state. Those are kids in his age group. You go on his JV record, he was, I don't know what it was, 8 and 12 or something this year. So it's a huge swing when we got a kid with some baby chub on him yet wrestling guys that got mustaches and hairy legs and armpit hair. But, and that's just from my experience. Obviously, you guys all know I'm heavily involved in wrestling. So.
And our hope was that by doing this, it would encourage the younger youth, because this year's an exception to have 12 to 13 kids coming out for 7th grade wrestling. Usually it's 4 to 5, right?
Oh, maybe even less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that'd be-
last year wasn't.
There was two last year that moved on. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's hope to encourage the kids to see that they aren't going to just get thrown up to the wolves at the JV level, and maybe they'll want to stay out.
And to, I've got one that weighs less, but he would never be able to make that weight to be able to even wrestle
Yeah.
probably at the JV level. So this allows those kids that have been wrestling every weekend for 5-6 months that they're still on the mat and
Yeah,
doing what
'cause
they're supposed to be doing. So.
In 5th and 6th, or through the youth, some of them kids are wrestling 40 to 50 matches a year.
Absolutely.
And they'll jump to the junior high, and they're lucky if they get 25 to 30.
So it's not discouraging kids, it's still supporting them and what they need to do, and this is the year to do it if the numbers allow it, so. So I don't think there'd be any, as far as the parent side of that goes. I've talked to a lot of the parents too, so. No, yeah, absolutely.
And you were just asking about busing them over there to practice in.
Well, that, yes, and, just because I thought I saw, was there an increase in cost if they went into the, what was
For us, the
100?
district, it would be.
Got it.
Yeah, it'd be about 1,500. That'd be the high side of it. The busing, went back and looked at what it costs us to run our junior high to our furthest place in basketball, and it was about $125, $30 each trip, and that's getting them to their towns afterwards. So I just went a little higher to make it be safe.
Well, thanks for bringing the information forward, Jason.
Thank you.
And the handbook that he referenced was attached to board book as well, if you'd like to take a look at that further.
All right, next we'll move on to new business. First up is approval of the fiscal year 19 application for long-term facilities maintenance revenue.
Superintendent, members of the board, I'm Jean Kopp, Director of Business Services. I'm here to present for your approval 2 items relating to our fiscal year 2019 application for long-term facility maintenance revenue. So the first is a 10-year revenue projection. This is an MDE calculation. It's based on a rate per adjusted pupil unit. So there's no changes here from what MDE calculates. There's a newer formula and an older formula. You get the higher of the two. So that's, for us, the newer formula. I think it's 34. Line 34 maybe is what it's the 620 number. Oh, sorry, go up. So if you look,
Tell me what line you want me to.
oh, stop, right there. So then the bottom, this isn't the final line because there's more add-ups, but this is the final number.
But this is the one we're working with.
Yep, right there, that one's
Fabulous.
So it would be $620,000 next year, and you see a larger jump to $837,000 in future years, and that's somewhat on increased pupil, the adjusted pupil unit, but it's mostly on a rate. So the rate goes up $88 between F18 and F19. So like I said, this is straight from MDE of what we're allowed for our revenue projection. The second item is a statement of assurances. So what that is signed by our superintendent, and it says that we are assuring the state that we're only going to use this funding for things that fit within long-term facilities maintenance. So we'll follow the state statutes for reporting, documentation, and implementation. To step back for a minute on long-term facilities maintenance, we have to submit annually 3 items. So it's this revenue projection, the statement of assurances, and an expenditure plan. So Carl showed you, we approved previously the expenditure plan. So this is the final 2 pieces of that package, and then going forward we would present it as a complete package. But so you submit the revenue projection, your plan for how you're going to spend it, and then the assurance that you're going to spend it appropriately. That's all. Does anyone have any questions? Great. Thanks, Jean. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll seek a motion. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you.
Your first board report. Of many more to come.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Kevin Huber, second by Dale Buss, to approve the fiscal year 2019 application for long-term facilities maintenance revenue. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. Next, we have our lawn service bids for 2018 and 2019.
In keeping with bid requirements, Mr. Carl Mink and Ms. Brenda Rozier did post in our local newspapers our option and openness to receiving bids for lawn care and snow removal. We do typically do those together. As you can see, we had 1 bid for our lawn care. There were 2 submissions for our bids for snow removal, and we'll reference that a little bit more as we get to that action item. This is only the lawn care right now in this action item. There was a slight increase of the 5 to 7% over the 2 years, which is less than the inflationary of 2.7% per year. We have found that Common Ground has done an excellent job on keeping our facilities and the outdoors looking great, keeping it, making sure that we don't have a going weeks and weeks on end without the lawns mowed. They are on a consistent basis. They have the equipment to do the work that needs to be done. They do so in a safe manner. As the spring begins and we're needing to mow lawns and we've got children out there at recess, they've already got patterns and schedulers so that they are not where our kids are, which I think is really important. You may think that's obvious. I've been in districts before where that wasn't the case, and so I find that to be a gift. And so the recommendation from Mr. Mink and also in his communications with Mr. Schroeder would be to move forward with accepting Common Ground's bid for our lawn care. Are there any questions, specifics on that for Carl, who's here tonight? Okay.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Dan Red, second by Krista Gettle, to approve Common Grounds Lawn and Landscape Incorporated as the lawn service contractor for the 2018 and 2019. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. Next, we have our snow removal.
As referenced a little bit ago, we did have 2 bids for this. The second bid came from a company out of the Twin Cities area. It was not even a completed bid, but I think as Carl indicated in his communication with them, they were kind of checking what the outstate kind of rates and everything were. And then obviously our complete and full bid from Common Ground. And so, again, recommending to continue with Common Ground for our snow removal. Our practice is that we do need to have a certain amount of snow in order for them to come out, and some of the areas that we do handle really on our own are our sidewalks and right in front of entrances, so we do have a little bit of, or a small amount of snow removal equipment, not a great deal to be able to handle the parking lots and some of the larger areas, but in order to be able to keep our entrances and exits safe during the school day when we'd be maybe getting continuous snow throughout the day. Our custodians do an excellent job with that, along with Mr. Schroeder. We found that when we are having school cancellations, or even when we're on time and we've got a large amount of snow, Common Ground has been timely in getting out early to have the parking lots open and ready to go, and also having the salt and sand distributed so that it's safe for when they're walking. So we've been pleased with their work. They, again, have enough equipment to be able to handle multiple sites at once, so we don't have one site getting done later in the day. They're to action, they're timely, and responsive to what we need.
All right, let's take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Motion by Kevin Huber, second by Michelle Bogart, to approve Common Grounds Lawn and Landscape Incorporated as the snow removal contractor for the 17-18 and 18-19 school year. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. Next, we have our cancellation of our July work session.
This has been something that has been, sometimes when we don't have a great deal of discussion items needing to happen, we have canceled the July work session, and sometimes we have not. This is a year where I would request that we do cancel it. I am going to be out of the district for the next 2 weeks, and so being able to compile the work session agenda would be a difficult task, and I think that with some of the timing of discussions that we need to continue on within our facilities work would be able to be diligently done in the August work session as well. So that I would be requesting that we cancel the July work session.
Make a motion.
A second. Motion by Krista Gettle, second by Ashley Receival, to cancel the July 24th, 2017 school board work session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. Next, we have our sub rates and temporary employee pay.
This is an annual process that we do. We have not increased our teacher sub rates for the last 2 years. You are going to see that we are going to be making a recommendation to increase those in some comparable aspects. Ms. Maggie Grimm, our payroll specialist, HR generalist, did do some checking with other districts to see where they are. And of course, these rates are where they've been before. And this is the time of the year when all districts are looking at these and making decisions. So we may find that some that are at 110, by the time September comes, they may be at 115 or 120. So just realizing that's the time frame of when it occurs. We have currently, for our teachers, sub rates been at $115 per day or $16 per hour. We've not increased that for the last 2 years. And when we did make that rate increase, we did find that it did have a positive impact on being able to access subs, but plain and simple, teacher subs are difficult to come by. And when you're in a teacher shortage, teacher subs are even at a greater shortage. But we are recommending to increase, and Maggie did two options of 120 or 125. I am going to recommend to you that we look at the $125 a day. One, on our comparables, also being able to do our best to be able to have a sub-pool that is reliable and being able to fill our positions. And we know that when we're not able to, and our teachers are needing to cover for one another, our administrators are needing to step into classrooms, it causes stress on the system, and we need people to be at their highest performing. So just to give you an idea of what a rate increase of either of these might be within a budgetary line, basing this off of, if we go off of exactly where our 2016-17 amount or numbers of subs that we needed at the $115 per day, we would, that total gross amount, notice it is gross, that also includes FICA, TRA, all of the other aspects that come along, that line item came in at around $139,000. If we increased and had that same number or quantity of subs needed at the 120 per day, it would give us an estimated gross of 145, so about a $6,000 increase. If we did $125 per day, it'd be a gross estimate of about 151, which estimated increase would be about $12,000. Now, will our rates or will our numbers and quantity needs be the exact same? Probably not, but it at least gives you an estimate of somewhat of an apples to apples. So that's one part of the temporary pay. The other areas is that we do sub rates for other employee groups as well. I'm going to go to the 125. I'm taking a look again at supply, demand, and needs within our district that we found. Did do some recommended increases for some and remaining the same for some. In this, you see our teacher sub-pay, so we just talked about. The hourly computation or calculation, we put that at $17.85 per hour. This extended school year is within our contract. We've just always had it on here as additional communications. At our paraprofessionals, this is a category of $11 per hour. I am recommending a slight increase there from $10.50 an hour to $11 per hour because, again, another group, an employee group that's very difficult to have a sub-pool for. And knowing that our comparables, we often are told, well, I can get this much 12 miles away, and so that has been one aspect of it. Food service, another very, very difficult group to be able to find subs for. I think some of it has to do with the training that people need to have, but it also is at a financial aspect, because sometimes these are sometimes a 3-hour position, a 4-hour position, and to be able to come in for that many hours, you know, you got to pay your gas to get there. So I am recommending a slight increase there as well of 50 cents from $9.75 to $10.25. Also keeping in mind within some of these employee groups what our starting salary is, so that we're not paying a sub more than we pay a starting there. But these are both well above that. Custodial, I would say to remain the same at $11.75. Secretarial the same at $11.50, and nurses remaining the same at $13.50. Our temporary employee not within the above indicated groups. For example, sometimes we're needing a temporary employee within some office support, or we're needing some temporary employee for technical aspects. Very rare that we need them, but sometimes we do when we maybe have a resignation and a gap of employment where we bring in some temporary times. Keeping that at $9.50, and our board meeting videographer keeping at $100 per meeting. So I guess the main difference between the two is the teacher sub rate at either 120 or 125.
Superintendent Pricer, would this be an opportunity for us to look at something like what LeSueur is doing, if you would put that back up? After a certain number of days, they increase. Would that entice people to look at TCU? You know, wait a minute. Yes, I'm willing to sub at TCU, because if I'm here, like at LeSueur Henderson, after 20 days, they jump it up to $130. Would this be an aspect of something that we would want to consider as well at TCU? trying to bring back that same quality sub who knows our school district over a period of time because they've been here 20 days.
Nope, that's a great question. When I first came, my first year, maybe into the second year, we did have a tiered sub levels similar to that. It was at a lower amount overall, but of course we've increased since then. One of the pieces that came from our payroll office was that it was an extremely time-consuming tracking system to be able to keep up with. We also then found that people who first signed up to sub, because you had so many of the repeats, some of the newer ones who would just sign up weren't getting called or weren't getting a chance at it, so they were finding they weren't getting picked up, so to speak, for a few weeks, and pretty soon then they didn't stay with us, they went somewhere else. Might it be time to look at that kind of a system again with a much more reduced sub-pool than what we had even 4 years ago? Yeah, it might be. We were bringing forward the 125, but if you'd like for us to explore a tiered system, we can do so either yet for this next year or do a study of that for the following year. It's always on the table.
Would those days start over each year then, or would they just,
At LeSueur, from what I understand, is if you've put in the 20 days and you come back day one, so next, 17, 18, now 18, 19, and if you've put in the 20 days, you would start at the 130 immediately.
Our system before was not that way, that
Yeah.
it started over each year.
I mean, with,
No, it's,
I do look at, that's certainly a nice increase of going from either the one up to the 120 or 125, but as we continue forward, if acquiring good quality sub is something, maybe that would be an area to look at in the future.
Well, that was a huge part of our conversations as far as negotiations go, also with part of that, the sick leave and paying out wellness and all of that. We spent a lot of time on that and realizing that it is hard to find, and that the teachers were doing a lot of that within the school day themselves, subbing when they can. I guess maybe moving forward that we go with what we have right now and then have that be a big part of what we move into the following school year.
we're more than willing to study it and see what
Yeah.
some possibilities, and maybe even surveyor subs and see what their thoughts are on, would that entice to make a difference?
Sure.
Because it was like that years ago, and there's no reason why it couldn't go back that way. But it'd be nice to be able to have that information back behind it again if they really felt that way. And give you time to do that rather than doing it now.
We certainly can.
But maybe just
Or
go.
if you would prefer to hold on this action and have us work on that for future, we sure can, but it certainly is worth studying and exploring.
I guess my recommendation is that we look at it as a future type thing.
Yep.
You've done this work, you've shown us these figures. It would only make sense to.
We go with the 125 right now, and then as we move into the next school year, we get that information and investigate it a little bit more. I like that.
Your second sentence on there about not being opposed to going higher for retirees, so you do the 125 for everybody, or is that something that we would need to discuss right now?
Our recommendation coming forward right now is a 125 for everybody.
For everybody?
Yeah.
And then the statement of I would not be opposed to the higher rate for our retirees would be for later then? Or are you saying, am I misunderstanding what you're saying?
This is coming from Maggie to me, as Maggie put the report together. So
Okay.
she said she wouldn't be opposed to a higher rate for retirees. When we decided to bring this forward, it did not include that. But again, you
Got
can
it.
craft your...
Maybe that's something to look into then for next year and pool the subs or survey the subs that we have now, and would that be more enticing because they've put in the years and they're good.
Is there any issue with going with the 125 right now if we don't know what our max would be next year? You know, if you're gonna tier it?
Well, what I'm hearing is that for 18, or for 17, 18, you'd be looking at either the flat 120 or the 125.
Right, that's
and then
what-
for 18, 19, by next year at this time, we'd have brought forward some information and data on both of those topics, the tiered and then the retirees at a different amount.
Right, I'm just thinking if we say like the max is 125 right now today for this contract, could that bite us in the butt next year?
Oh, if it dropped?
If we're tiering it?
If you tiered and it dropped?
Well, I'm just saying, let's say we go 120 after 10 to 20, then it's only a $5 increase for the next 10 years. You know, I just,
That's a lot of gifts.
well, I'm just saying, I don't,
Right.
I'm just looking at, yeah, we're gonna go 125 right now, and then next year, it might not be a pay increase then. It might be that's what our max is.
I think the issues we have now, we have to stay competitive because
Right.
every negotiation, we just went through it, and I was not there this time, but every negotiation, this is a huge, plus trying to get subs.
Well, I'm not against it, don't think I'm against it, I'm just trying
But where
to,
do we start next time if we do
Right.
it? Yep.
Yeah.
because going through negotiations, that's where you start.
And, you know, this does not automatically, this is one we bring to the board each year. Like I said, we've not had an increase in this for 2 years. So if in fact we bring information on a tiered and we are at the 125, we would, might it mean not an increase in someone in the tier? It might, but there's been, you don't automatically increase sub rates every year anyway.
Right.
I'm going to guess that anyone's at the 110s and probably even the 115s are going to be looking to at least a 120. Especially the 110s are going to probably increase.
No, I'm cool with the 125.
Any other questions?
Great insights, thank you.
Okay, I'll seek a motion, and I'm going to add to that we're looking at the $125 per
I'll make a
day.
motion for the 125.
Second.
Motion by Michelle Bocart, second by Dale Bus to approve the subrates and a temporary employee pay schedule for the 17-18 school year, and that includes the 125 for the substitute teacher. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed 7-0. All right, next.
Thank you for your support in that. I know that this is it's a big item.
We have our TCU facilities resolution.
Based upon our discussion at the work session, we were bringing forward just this resolution in moving forward for preparations. Want to make sure what this resolution is and what it is not. What it is the official act of the board directing me as the superintendent to move forward with gathering documentation, to starting to formulate review and comments, to fleshing out further some of the possibilities with numbers and that, what might be and what might not be within the bond, providing you then options down the road to make some further decisions. What this is not setting a bond amount. This is not setting a bond date. This is not setting any types of formalized calling for a vote. This is just simply the direct action to say, Terry, go get gathering this stuff so that then you can make decisions that you need to make.
Resolution to begin preparations for bond referendum. Whereas the Tri-City United School Board reconvened the TCU Community Task Force on Facilities in May 2017. Whereas the TCU Community Task Force on Facilities conducted 3 meetings from May 25th, 2017 to June 12th, 2017, and a recommendation was presented to the TCU School Board on June 26, 2017. Whereas the Tri-City United School Board has reviewed and analyzed, refined, and clarified the options within the TCU Community Task Force on Facilities recommendation at a work session on June 26, 2017, as well as further study the facility capacities and enrollment projections. Therefore, be it resolved that the Tri-City United School Board authorizes the administration to begin developing all of the required documents and processes to prepare for a 2018 building bond referendum.
All right, since this is a resolution, Dan, introduce the resolution. I'll need a second on that.
Second?
And then this will be a roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Yes. Ash?
Yes.
Dale? Krista?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Kevin? And myself would be a yes. The resolution has passed.
In anticipation of being directed to do so, I have only slightly begun some of this work. There's much more to go, but I do just want to share with you what we've begun to pull together. One of these would be some tax impact estimates on possible figures that were presented from the last work session. If you take a look at the document here with the yellows and the blues, option 1 does have with it that additional classroom at TCU Lonsdale for the preschool discussion that we had. So you can see that question 1 for that total borrowing would be at $14,430,000. So you can also tell or see here that the cost of issuance, which we needed to know what is the bond issuance cost, in that figure would be at $229,000. That is included in that $14,430,000. Question 2, if it is something to consider for the community center auditorium, is based at a $7.9 million, and as you can tell what the totals are. So I'm just going to talk through the columns. We're not going to spend a great deal of discussing it because I'd really like for you as a board to have some time to review and digest it all, but I want to kind of give the order of the columns to understand it. As we've seen in the past with the tax impacts, you can see it's broken down by residential homestead, commercial industrial, ag homestead as well within the, based on the number of acreage, and then non-homestead agricultural. The next column is what the total school portion of taxes pay 17 are for those types of entities, be it land or be it homeowner. Then the next one, as you can see with the blue at the top, is the estimated ag tax credit change for payable 2018. So as you can tell, it only is for the ag homestead and then the non-homestead agriculture, and the decrease is there. So the ag tax credit changes payable 2018 are estimated that for in the first ag homestead, property valuing, assuming 160 acres with the dwelling place at an assessed value of $6,000 per acre, the tax credit there for previous La Center, can we still have to split these out by previous La Center School District, previous Montgomery Lonsdale School District? The ag tax credit for previous La Center would be $255.79 credit. That's why it's a red and a decrease. Within the previous Montgomery Lonsdale, if you follow across there, that 40% ag tax credit would be at a $558.17. As you can tell, it's a larger amount. The question would be, why would that be at a larger amount? Because if we recall that within the consolidation agreement, the past bonds would be covered by those past districts. So previous Montgomery Lonsdale does still have taxes going for the bond for the building of the TCU Lonsdale School and the renovation at TCU Montgomery. The high school is shared now between both previous Montgomery Lonsdale and previous La Center. So we still have those aspects that are out there, but overall tax impact on any bond from going forward now won't matter where you were before. The impact is the same, and I know that was a big confusing piece for people in the previous bond, so that would not be the case. The next column would be the tax impact of question 1, including that ag tax credit. The next column would be tax impact of a question 2, including the ag tax credit, and then the next column of a total, obviously question 1, question 2 combined, and then finally that difference from pay 2017 of what the increase would be, but what the comparison is. Interestingly, as you can see, again, that ag tax credit has such an impact that it does make the difference from pay 17 much more, I guess, appeasable, so to speak, than what we were seeing before. And in fact, even for previous Montgomery Lonsdale, the ag tax credit is at such a large amount from the 40%, is that even if both questions were to pass, the comparative on payable 17 would still be a reduction for landowners from previous Montgomery Lonsdale. So just explaining how those columns work. If we flip the page over to option 2, you see that this does not have that additional early childhood room, and that puts us at a bond referendum of 14 million flat. In talking with Dave Maroney, that there could be a chance to relook at some numbers to maybe get that slightly under 14 million still, if that is our real threshold, which I really do ask you as a board to give some really deep consideration and thought about if that is a hard number, or if we can consider to be slightly over. Same kind of patterning, as you can tell, with the columns all exactly the same, and obviously this one having a lower tax impact than the option 1 would. Any questions on the format of this document, though? Because I'd really like you to take time to study it before our August times that we come together, especially the August work session, where we'll really be digging deeply into things. Okay. Any thoughts or comments on the impact of the ag tax credit?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's cool.
I think that'll be pretty impactful.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's interesting to see the real, I mean, granted, these are estimates, but to see some of those figures. Hopefully, again, it makes it a little more tolerable for people to consider supporting bond referendums for schools with a high ag community, high percentage of ag planned community. Any questions or further information on tax impacts that you'd like for me to be gathering, Bill, from Baird?
I don't think so. It's a good starting place.
Okay, and that's what it's meant to be. The other document would just be a bond timeline calendar. I know at the work session there was discussion more about a February date, which again is one of the state statute designated special election dates. And so when you're backing up within the calendar from February 13th, some dates that we would need to bear in mind, one being the last date to designate new or different polling locations would be November 15th. We're going to do that in August as part of our annual process. The other big one to notice here is Friday, December 1st would be the last day to adopt a resolution calling for referendum. That's a big one. We would need to make sure that we've got that well before that. But I think if we do consider and do move forward with the bond, we need to be having much more upfront time, because one of the things that I know we did not have a huge turnout for, and it's becoming more and more aware to people, is the early voting. So you aren't relying on that one single date. Then getting the early votes in can really make a big difference, which means then, though, that communication has to happen sooner so that people are ready to make decisions. There's been some statistical, that's an easy word to say, right? Statistical studies that once a bond or once a special election is determined by a board, about a certain, and I don't know the exact percentage, I'll check it out for you, but a large percentage already have their mind made up.
It doesn't surprise me.
So early voting is big. So those are just two beginning documents. Other things that, now that you've directed me to, I'll be beginning to work with Dave Maroney on review and comment information without solid numbers plugged in. We'll come back to take a look at what we would want, or what you would want in and out of the bond. Single question, two questions, those types of decisions are ones that you're going to need to be prepared to make.
All right, next we have TCU auction of obsolete and surplus items.
Yes. Mr. Mink and Mr. Schroeder have been working with our site custodians and also other administrators throughout our district to take a look at what types of equipment are out there that we would want to consider for an auction. Again, I want to clarify what tonight's action is and what it isn't. All that this is for you as a board approving for us to continue the work to consider planning for an auction. What this is not is you are not approving the obsolete items tonight. That would come as a detailed list at the August board meeting. But before we go too much further in getting too much information and solidified dates with auctioneers and with other entities, we thought it would be important to have board action either in support or not in support of us considering an auction. One of the other things we want our community members to know is this is a different auction than what was conducted at consolidation time. This is an auction about actual surplus equipment, such as fencing types of things, such as desks, things that simply are not usable within our classrooms any longer or needed within our facilities. This is not an auction about the previous two districts' memorabilia. We keep that stuff, and we want it to hold on to our proud history of who we came and grew from. So this is not about Wildcats and Redbirds. This is about Tri-City United equipment that is not usable or would be considered surplus and not needed. Okay.
Just stuff.
Just stuff. Yeah. And our facilities committee has taken a look at pictures of some of the stuff that we've considered already, and now we have eyes getting back on it from our administrators, stakeholders who have direct connections with it to make sure that what we believe to be surplus, it really is surplus.
Good deal. I'll seek a motion.
So move.
I'll second it.
Motion by Dale Buss, second by Ashley Receval to move forward with plans for an auction of surplus equipment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed 7-0.
Keep moving it along then, Carl. All right.
Next, we have our cooperative sponsorship with Lesueur for girls swimming and diving.
Mr. Mary, would you like to come forward and share a little bit of information on this?
Since you approved the addition of swimming and diving, I've been in contact with some of the schools that I had mentioned who might be interested in co-oping. And Mr. Henderson at this time is the only one that is interested. And Dave over there, their activities director, had mentioned that there's about 27 girls interested. He thinks it's probably more realistic, like 18 to 20. But as of right now, he had 27 that were interested. And for us, we have 10 to 12, give or take, either way, that are interested. And the squads can be anywhere from 25 to 30, 35 kids as an individual. But it's a team aspect, but there's a lot of individual events that kids can be a part of. So you can have a fairly large team. And so I suggest that we hope that you would approve the co-op with Lesueur Henderson for swimming and diving.
Do they do a varsity and a junior high, or is it just all one team?
It's all one. There's a varsity, and there can be a junior or JV.
JV.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if a club like that with facility usage, because they have a community center, we have our own also look for practices or...
Will it all be here?
Yes, because we will have the coach. They won't have a coach over there unless we hire a JV coach, which would be another additional expense. As of right now, it'd be nice just to have a varsity the first year and not, well, the first 2 years, because if we do the co-op, it has a minimum of 2 years. And I guess you could add another coach second year if you wanted to, if we have the numbers for it. But as of right now, all we're approved and budgeted for is one coach. And I don't think we'd have the numbers so too high that we would have to.
In your communications, though, with Mr. Swanberg, it's been very clear that our intent is that this co-op, that we are the whole school.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. He was asking if they would practice there and we would practice here. It wouldn't
Oh.
work because the coach is here.
I
We
misunderstood.
only
I
have
thought
one
the
coach.
question was,
No, that's what I was asking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
For
one are we going to
practice.
use? Are we going to?
Oh, you were asking us, we're the host, yeah, we would be the host. I don't know if theirs is a competitive pool or not, I know ours is. So we would be the host, I'm sorry. I misunderstood the question.
My question, even with the, a reduced amount from LeSueur down to 20, and if ours would stay at that 15, 35, one coach for 35 individuals. wouldn't
That's
that-
high. That would be high.
That's, yeah, I mean, I look at our, our Schedule A when we were looking, rating at those type of things.
And if it got to that point, and we
We'd
would
be-
need to have an extra coach.
An assistant
The
coach.
sewer said they would obviously help out with the expenses.
Sounds good.
our thought in financing, it would be similar to what we do in our co-op for hockey, is that we take the full cost of the program, coaches included, and divide that by participants and bill out, so to speak, by participants. So if Mr. Henderson does have more students than we do, their cost per participant obviously is going to end up to significantly, I shouldn't maybe use significantly, to impact our overall cost that we anticipated.
So it's a chargeback.
Yes, yep, and that's what they do for us for hockey as well.
What does that do for like team name and branding and?
It's going to stay TCU and all, it'll just be TCU colors, everything. I asked Dave about that, and he said it's fine. In your, in the co-op sponsorship, it asks that question, who's the team going to be identified as? It would be TCU, LeSueur, Henderson, but it would be our colors, our mascot, and it'd be recognized as TCU. We'd be paid whatever monies would come back from the State High School League to here, and Dave was fine with that. We could also, there is a lady that would be interested in helping out if we needed another coach. It could be that they are a volunteer coach as well. It just depends on how many we get and how we want it to look at. We already have kind of budgeted out what we can afford to do for the first year, so I think the first year we can manage somehow.
All right, any other questions? Want to take a motion?
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Dan Rudd, second by Krista Gettle, to approve the Minnesota State High School League application for cooperative sponsorship with LeSueur Henderson Schools for girls swimming and diving, beginning with the 2017-18 school year. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed 7-0. Next, we're looking at the same sponsorship for girls dance team.
This came up out of discussion for swim, that Dave asked, was there any possibility you might be interested in dance too, because they have a lot of dance studios over there. Well, not a lot, but enough, where the girls who do dance go to dance studios like our TCU girls do. And I said, well, let me look at the numbers. And we graduated a large senior group last year, 6 or 7 of them. And in looking at the numbers for the next couple years, which again, we would do a minimum if we did this of 2 years, our numbers are not very big when it comes to our dance team. As you can see in my description, we will be around 9 for our 9 through 12 girls, which this has traditionally been offered just 9 through 12. It can be 7 through 12 if we want to. We have 5 additional 7th and 8th graders. And when you look at competing in a section and competing in meets throughout the year, the largest you can be for a high kick, there's 2 categories, high kick and jazz. You're surprised I know all this, don't you, Dan?
I am.
You're impressed. And when the meets that I've been to in section meets, they can have up to 34 girls. And there's a big difference between watching the section teams that have 10 to 15 and those that have the max of 30 that you can have, or 34. And we're gonna have 9, 14 at best if we have our 7th and 8th graders. I mean, we're asking 7th and 8th graders to dance like juniors and seniors, which we have some really good 7th and 8th grade dancers, but that's just a big jump, a big difference.
It's a different kind of dance.
Yeah, and I think it would be in our best interest, at least for 2 years, to see how this goes and consider co-oping with LeSueur Henderson for dance as well. They've got some decent numbers. They have about 20 girls interested. He's thinking maybe like 17 or 18 realistically, which would put us up close to what we need to be at a max squad for high kick. So now jazz, they cross over. Some of the girls in high kick will dance in jazz as well, but not all of them. Some of them are just separately jazz and some are just separately high kick. So it would help in filling out our squad for jazz as well.
Jazz is much harder. It's usually much smaller.
Yes, it's more ballet and...
It's more technique.
Yeah, yep. Where high kick is it's really fun to watch. I mean, it's fun to watch both, but high kick is very energetic, yeah, and very fast-paced. Dan, quit laughing at me.
Would this be the same as like the swim, that it would be TCU, or what would the
Yep.
brand be? Is it the Black Diamonds?
Yeah, it'll be
Okay.
the Black Diamonds, yep.
Any other questions?
Would we have an additional tryout then?
Yeah, we would have to. I think we were going to have one. We've had ours in May. We were going to have another one in August or September when school starts. And because we just wanted to make sure we had all the girls that we wanted, but it's pretty assured that we had everybody that was going to be out.
Okay. So is the plan to continue with the 7th and 8th graders that tried out?
It depends on how many we get. I mean, then you would move to wanting to have a JV, and
Right.
then it'd be another additional coach. It just depends on the numbers and who we would get out. So probably not, but
If
I
we
don't
went
know yet.
this.
If we did the co-op, I would say it would just stay 9-12 as is. But being we knew we had low numbers coming in this year because of the high seniors, we added the 7th and 8th grade tryout, hoping we'd get some more numbers, but it wasn't as high as we hoped.
We are anticipating practices for our dance line to be in the TCU La Center auditorium. So one for ease of the coach with the timing of when her position concludes at the day to be able to get started right after school. And plus, we already do have the shuttles going and stuff too.
And Terry brought up, or Dr. Preisler, sorry, brought up a good point about will we have enough space for busing to stay as we are currently. And in thinking about the numbers, we should be fine to continue one bus going back and forth for shuttles when we add the dance, varsity dance going over.
The link area isn't going to work this year?
We didn't have them in the link last year. We had them in the elementary gym here. But it's Emberlie Tellijohn is the teacher, and she teaches in the center, and it's hard for her to get over here in time for the girls to get started. So she was hoping it would be best if we could bring the girls to her over there, and it does work. But they were in the gym last year. The link isn't a sufficient place for them to dance.
They lose quite a bit of time in travel then.
They would either way, because she couldn't get over here any faster than what they can get over there.
It'd be kind of nice though for LeSueur Henderson too, then. It's
Yeah.
kind of middle ground then, if they're going to kind of give and take, I guess.
And they were still needing to follow the same shuttle bus time here as we would for there. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, they'll get there by
Right, we don't-
3:20.
Right, it's always been just high school. So this will be the only high school sport they'll practice in the center.
Yeah. No,
Tennis.
tennis and not tennis, softball. Tennis does.
Softball in the
Softball.
spring goes over there.
No, they don't.
No, I don't think.
They
They
go here.
practiced over there.
For indoor.
7th and 8th.
When they were in the
Indoor,
gym.
yes,
For
indoor.
indoor.
Yep, correct. Sorry, I was thinking outside. I shouldn't have disagreed with you, Chairman. Chairwoman.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, thank you.
We're gonna
I'm new,
attack them.
I'm new.
Oh, wow.
Can't keep you that
Yeah, I was
excuse.
going to say, how long is that going to last?
They said maybe a year and a half.
No, I-
Who they is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Do we have any other questions? All right, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Krista Gettle, second by Kevin Huber to approve the Minnesota State High School League application for a cooperative sponsorship with LeSueur Henderson School for girls dance team starting the 2017-18 school year. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. Next, we have our 17-18 MSBA renewal. Thank you.
This is simply we just received the renewal notice this afternoon in the mail. It is our annual renewal to be a part of MSBA and also to be able to access their policies, policy services, which, as you can tell by the number of policies we have, makes a big difference. And so this is pretty straightforward and pretty much similar to past costs, so.
I'll make a motion to approve this. Imagine how.
I'll second it. Motion by Michelle Bocart, second by Ashley Rosebo to approve the renewal for the MSBA for the 17-18 school year, and that would be the Minnesota School Boards Association. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. Next, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Dan Rudd, second by Kevin Huber to adjourn the meeting at 7:29 PM. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is passed, 7-0. Meeting